Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into the latest DappRadar April games report. And, well, the first thing that jumps out is that daily active wallets in blockchain gaming, they kind of hit their lowest point this year.
That's right. And, the immediate thought is, okay, is this a downturn? Is this a bad sign? But what we really need to unpack is maybe this dip is actually sort of a necessary step, like a recalibration towards something stronger.
Exactly. Because, even with that lower activity, there's still a lot happening. Loads of development, continued belief in the sector. So we've gone through the DappRadar numbers, looked at specific games, chain activity, funding. Yeah. And the goal today is really to get past those headline figures and see what's actually shifting underneath, what opportunities are maybe opening up.
Okay, let's dive into the data then. So April saw 4.8 million daily unique active wallets in blockchain gaming. And like you said, that's down 10%, lowest point for 2025 so far.
Right. And the whole DApp picture is changing too, isn't it? Gaming used to be way out front, but now it's neck and neck with DeFi, both around 21%.
Yeah, exactly. And AI is interestingly gaining traction. It's up to 16%. So the dominance is, it's diversifying.
It really is.
What's also really interesting, I think, is this trend we're seeing of chain ownership. You have these situations where basically one game is the chain's activity.
Oh, right. Off the grid.
Exactly. Off the grid is 100% of the activity on the GUNZ chain. Then you've got World of Dippians, that's 76% of Nebula's activity. And Age of Dino is pretty much all of Exterio.
So it makes you wonder, is that a good thing? Focus? Or is it maybe a bit risky if that one game stumbles?
That's the question, isn't it? It's a very focused approach. But then you see the opposite strategy emerging too.
You mean like Ronin?
Precisely. Ronin started, mainly with Axie Infinity, but now they're actively bringing in outside games.
Yep.
In April, they added Avaric, Saga, and Realms of Illyria.
So they're shifting towards being more of a platform, an ecosystem that feels potentially more resilient, maybe? Wider appeal?
It could be. It's definitely a different way to build a fascinating contrast. Okay, so let's talk about some specific game developments then, because there were some big moves.
Yeah, absolutely. Off the grid, we mentioned them. They launched their GUNZ mainnet. And the big news there is it's the first Web3 game hitting PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series consoles. That feels like a pretty major step for infrastructure.
Oh, definitely. Bringing it to those mainstream consoles is huge. And, Axie Infinity, they're still keeping their community really engaged. New seasons, big prize pools.
And that Achia's Legacy game they announced had massive pre-registrations back in March, right?
Yeah, 2.5 million. Shows the player base is still there and excited. Then there's Seraph. Their Season 3 launched, and they added things like dungeons, player shops, and actual on-chain rewards. That's an interesting evolution of the play-to-earn idea.
Kind of refining that model, making it more about tangible ownership.
Exactly. And there's movement elsewhere, too. Star Atlas rolled out new PvP modes. The Sandbox is pushing user-generated content hard. Huge prize pool for branded stuff. And Gods Unchained is moving to ZK EVM.
Oh, yeah, for better smart contracts, right? Faster, cheaper transactions.
Yep. So lots of foundational work happening, even with that dip in the daily wallet numbers we saw earlier.
Which I guess brings us nicely to funding. Because on the surface, April looks kind of weak, doesn't it? Only $21 million raised. Big drop from March's $69 million.
Is a significant drop, yeah. But when you dig into where that money actually went, the picture changes a bit.
How so?
Well, it turns out that roughly 2/3, 66%, of all the funding in 2025 so far has gone into infrastructure projects.
Ah, okay. Not just individual games.
Right. Arbitrum Gaming Ventures made its first big investments, $10 million split across companies like Wildcard, Proof of Play, XAI. It looks like a deliberate strategy,
Yeah.
Focus on building the underlying systems needed for the future.
So less about funding the gold rush itself and more about building the tools, the picks and shovels. That does sound like the market's maturing a bit.
It suggests that, yeah. A focus on the long game. Building the foundations.
Okay, so looking forward then, what about May? Any potential catalysts or big things on the horizon we should keep an eye on?
May could be pretty interesting. MapleStory N is set to launch, I think, mid-May, and it already had over 1 million beta signups, bringing a huge established IP like MapleStory into Web3. That's definitely one to watch.
Yeah, a big name like that could draw in a lot of new people. What else?
We've also got Treeverse kicking off its Season 1. Gigaverse is apparently introducing some novel viral mechanics, which could be interesting for user growth. And there's the potential release of Illuvium, Zero people have been waiting for that one for a while.
Right. Illuvium always generates buzz.
And then you've got others like Lost Glitches, Pirate Nation, Realms of Illuria. They're all continuing to develop and show promise. So, yeah, plenty happening.
So, putting it all together then, it really feels like this current phase isn't so much a decline, but maybe more of a reset or a recalibration, like you said earlier. Some noise might be dying down, but the actual building blocks are being put in place.
I think that's a good way to put it. Yes, some metrics might be lower in the short term, but the development work, the strategic infrastructure investment, these upcoming launches, it all points to people building for the long haul. They're setting up the future of this space.
And it really makes you think, doesn't it, how this focus on solid infrastructure could eventually lead to gaming experiences that are just more sustainable, more genuinely engaging for players, moving past the hype cycles maybe towards real fun and utility. Thanks, this was a great deep dive.